So when I bought this 2006 Audi, I knew it had this rust spot in front of the driver's door that had to be fixed. But if you know anything about me, you'll be able to guess if I was going to take it somewhere or do it myself. So, after a little YouTube research, I'll start with the first step, which is doing your best impression of someone trying to get tetanus.
And you're gonna tetanus yourself.
No, the real first step is to remove all the rust. So I'll start doing that with a screwdriver and some 80 grit sandpaper. I started using a sanding block, but then later switched to this hack of using a kitchen sponge behind the sandpaper to evenly distribute the force. You could also do this with power tools, but for whatever reason, I opted to just do this whole project by hand, which, like a lot of things I do, ended up taking longer than I expected. Once all the rust is gone and the affected area is down to the bare metal, open the rust restoration kit from 3M. This comes with the 2 different body fillers you'll need, along with the corresponding hardeners, a mixing spatula, sandpaper, and an adhesive-backed metal mesh. Before I apply the first body filler step, I'm going to go ahead and vacuum off the entire area. And then, I'm not sure how successful this was, but I'm going to go ahead and fill the entire cavity with rust neutralizer to hopefully prevent the rust from coming back. Alright, now we need something for the fiberglass body filler to adhere to, so we're going to cut down this metal mesh patch and place it inside the body panel with the adhesive facing out. Once it's in place, it's not perfectly flush with the body panel, but, you know, we're playing horseshoes and hand grenades. Close is good. So the first thing we're finally going to apply to close up this hole is Bondo Glass, which is a fiberglass filler. It's a 2-part mixture, so once we mix in this red hardener, we'll have about 5 minutes to apply it to the car before it fully cures. This first filler is much thicker and will provide the mechanical strength for the repair. And this brings us to my big mistake during this project, which probably took the final product from a 9 out of 10 down to like a 6 out of 10.
You made a big mistake! Huge!
So my mistake was right here, where I should have definitely not put body filler covering the gap between these 2 panels. You can see I realized that too late and tried to go back over it with a screwdriver to make that gap artificially appear again. But as you'll see, that did not really work out for me. Anyway, I'll sand down that Bondo glass filler with 80 grit sandpaper until it is smooth with the rest of the body panel. As I sand, you can see this Bondo fiberglass filler actually has glass fibers in it. I know, a big shocker. So it's very important to wear a mask during this phase. Alright, so now we can use the Bondo body filler, the second mixture we'll use. This one is also 2 parts, but is a lot thinner, so will give us a super smooth surface once it's sanded so that we can paint it. If you're a big fan of peanut butter analogies, this is more like smooth Jif, where the first one was chunky peanut butter.
Put it on there. Yeah.
Same with the other steps, we'll start sanding with 80 grit, but then we'll move on to a few finer grits to get it super smooth. And I'll test this as I go by running my finger from the new part to the old part. And then I'll try to remove some of the body filler from this gap, but it's going to continue to look pretty bad. I already said I screwed up there, so not much else to add. Now I'm going to move up to 180 grit and then progressively sand a slightly larger and larger area to help blend it in. And this will all be covered by the new paint, so it's okay to scuff up some of the old paint. And then I'll move up to 320. And you can see I'm starting to sand through some of that top coat of body filler, which isn't great, but it's okay as long as it's all really smooth. So then before I paint, I'll go ahead and vacuum up all this glass fiber and then wipe down the surface good with rubbing alcohol. Then I'll tape off the surrounding part of the car so I can go ahead and start painting. And we'll start with an automotive primer. You can see I'm using this trick at the edges where I roll the paper so it's a soft paint line instead of a hard, harsh line. And then I'll go ahead and do 3 coats of primer. The first 2 will be thinner to prevent paint runs, and then the last one will be put on a little bit more thick. Now to help give it a nice smooth finish, I'll go ahead and sand the primer down with 600 grit before moving to the blue colored paint. And then same as before, I'll wipe it down with rubbing alcohol to make sure I remove all the dust. If you watched this far into the video and are finding it interesting, I would really appreciate if you would subscribe.
What are you waiting for? Do it!
Alright, I promise that's the only plug. So for the paint I'm using, I got it from TouchUpDirect.com. They will VIN match your car and they will send you the color coat as well as clear coat. So they send you this little card you can test it out on. And then I also got this little pen to fix smaller spots in the future. The color coat, clear coat, and then pen together were about $78, so definitely not cheap, but as you'll see, I think it was probably worth it as it matched the car very well, even though the car is over 15 years old. Similar to the primer, I'll start painting and then let off when I'm over the masked off area to get a nice even coat. For the blue, I ended up doing 4 thin coats. Once I'm done with the color, I'll move on to the clear coat. This will help protect the color as well as give it that shine that it had coming off the lot. On the first coat, I think I put it on too thick because you can see these 2 lines where it's very shiny and then in between it's not. If you have experience painting cars, let me know if this was good or bad, but I ended up wiping it off and starting over. Anyway, I ended up doing 3 total coats of clear coat on top. So now the repair is almost done. You can see that blue is blending in fairly well to the rest of the paint, but it's not quite as shiny. So we're going to clean it off with some soapy water and then wet sand it with some super fine sandpaper. During this, it is important to keep the sandpaper wet. As the water evaporates, you'll be able to tell the surface is kind of hazy after the very fine sandpaper, but that's okay, that'll be fixed with a polish in the last step. So you can see here I did a decent job of feathering in all the paint layers because the line between the new and the old is pretty faint. Finally, to get that super shiny finish, we're going to use a scratch remover and then a nice wax. Unfortunately, at this point, I'd realized I had sanded too much with the 3000 grit sandpaper and had burned through some of the blue paint. So I'm going to mark that area off with tape and then go ahead and apply the wax to the rest of it. And then I'm going to go back and tape everything off and repaint just that small section and then apply a clear coat to a slightly larger section around that. So in this scenario, inexperience cost me probably around an hour worth of extra work. Once I redo the scratch remover and the wax, the repair will finally be done. So here's before and after. Now, there's a little bit of orange peel on the part that I painted, and obviously the panel gap that I filled in with body filler, but overall I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. It was pretty fun doing my first bodywork project, and it looks a lot better than a rust hole. So, thanks